Welcome back to my latest 2019 NFL mock draft video. This time it is for the free agency edition. I gotta say, after taking some time off to help my wife with our newborn twins, it feels really good to be back. Now, this mock isn't gonna be as crazy as my last one. I like to go back and forth with it, and this time I'm gonna try and keep it more realistic. There's enough time for another crazy one in a couple weeks, with then maybe one more realistic one right before the draft. So I'm taking a break from trades on this one since it took so long to plan that out and jumping right into it. You guys know the drill by now. Hit the like button because it's the best and easiest way for you to support me and my efforts making videos for this channel. Let's get started. When I started my 7-round mock draft series with the Cardinals, I brought up the idea of taking Kyler Murray as just a fun scenario to joke about, but now it really does seem like there's a chance the Cardinals are going to go through with trading Josh Rosen and drafting Kyler Murray. I get the intrigue of Kyler Murray, so I'm not hating on that part of it, but if they let Rosen go for anything less than, say, the Patriots' 32nd overall pick, then they have failed in this game of NFL draft poker. If you check out my 7-round Cardinals mock video, you'll see why I think that this is a really bad idea, but like I said, I get it at the same time. Kyler Murray has a chance to be something really special and would energize a franchise that's lacked energy for years. This is probably his best landing spot too, because I love the idea of him playing most of his games indoors where field conditions are ideal. So I felt like I needed to do a mock draft with this scenario to see how the draft could potentially play out from there. But somebody's going to get a really good young quarterback for cheap in Josh Rosen because the Cardinals lacked the talent to support him in 2018. The Cardinals not taking the best overall player in the draft allows him to fall into the hands of a division rival. I can just imagine the reactions when Nick Bosa sacks Kyler Murray for the first time. This is the easiest pick to mock in the entire draft with the Kyler Murray at number 1 scenario. The 49ers have shown interest in Quinnen Williams from Alabama also, and he might fit another need now that they traded for D Ford. And what that would mean is they probably don't want to give up on Solomon Thomas just yet, the 2nd overall pick in the 2017 draft. Pass on Nick Bosa here for Quinnen Williams. It's just because they did not want to throw out a defensive line with 4 defensive ends on it. It was brought to my attention after the last mock that Adam Gase thinks that Greg Williams can run a 3-4 defense still due to his vast experience in the league. Even though Greg Williams has been a 4-3 guy exclusively during his career, I think that it sounds like he doesn't really want to rush the transition with the personnel currently being set up for the 3-4 under the previous regime. And while I want to give them Quinnen Williams to eventually replace Leonard Williams, as I've previously stated in mocks, this slow transition makes me feel like the lack of a true pass rusher on the roster is the reason that they're hesitant to just rip the band-aid off and switch to a 4-3. Moving on from Leonard Williams doesn't make sense to me, honestly, despite the rumors he's on the block, so they should get the second best edge rusher in Josh Allen, who also has even and odd defensive front flexibility, plus we'd get to see the Josh Allens face off twice a year. I think that Josh Allen could play the role that they originally wanted Anthony Barr to play for them as like sort of a utility chess piece for the defense to move all over the place. Mike Mayock really used his time in the media as a chance to do some in-depth research and scouting. He was really able to learn the league inside and out during this process, and he's mentioned that one of the things he picked up on was that the top quarterbacks in the league hate pressure up the middle more than anything else, and that's because they can't step up in the pocket, which limits their ability to make the appropriate reads, and that weighed in heavily in this pick. After they re-signed Jonathan Hankins, I almost changed this pick, but Hankins isn't going to get you that inside pressure that he's talking about, but Quinnen Williams will. Maurice Hurst is going to be such a steal for them as a 5th-round pick if everything plays out in his favor, but I don't think he stops Williams from being this pick here because you never know if that heart issue is going to become in fact an issue. I think that the Raiders should draft DK Metcalf here, but I already pissed Raiders fans off enough with the last mock draft, so they get the safer pick this time around. Having Antonio Brown around DK Metcalf would be so beneficial for his long-term development as a football player, but it sounds like the Raiders are actually trying to buy an offense and draft a defense here. I've been giving the Bucs an offensive lineman here in almost every single mock draft, but as we get closer to the draft, I've gotten cold feet on that idea, especially after they re-signed left tackle Donovan Smith. The way that this draft is structured, it definitely makes more sense for them to grab an impact defender at 5 and then grab an interior offensive lineman later on. Brian Burns and Jason Pierre-Paul would be a nice duo for a few years, and JPP is 30 years old, and it's best to stay ahead of the pass rush decline and make sure that you've got guys on board to pick up the slack. Devin White's actually another option after losing Quan Alexander to the 49ers, but positional value takes precedent this early in the draft. The Giants are a hot mess right now. I was in the hospital with my wife when I got news of them trading Odell Beckham Jr. to the Browns, and my wife's entire family are Giants fans, so this was probably, other than my twins actually being born, the second happiest moment of the first week of free agency for me, because I just found it hilarious that they would move Odell Beckham Jr. for as little in return as they got. I totally understand moving him, but you've got to get more in return than what they got. I'm really sorry, Giants fans. Dark days are ahead. I cannot believe that they are basically sticking with Eli Manning through all of this stuff and allowing him to just ruin your cap situation right now when you could have moved on from him, cut the dead weight, saved a bunch of cap space, moved on with a rookie. Hell, even a cheap veteran would have been better than going into the season with Eli Manning as a $22 million man. But anyways, the Giants are probably going to have to move up for Dwayne Haskins if they really want him. But if we lived in a world with no NFL draft trades, it'd be pretty easy for him to fall into their laps at number 6 in this scenario. The Jaguars did in fact land Nick Foles, which was the only accurate prediction of the 4 guys I put on the thumbnail for the last video, but whatever, I'm over it. They also released their right tackle Jeremy Parnell, so it makes sense for them to add the top right tackle in the draft and probably the top offensive lineman overall in Jawan Taylor. Taylor is a mauler who would excel in a power run offense like the Jaguars want to employ, and then Big Dick Nick is one of the best deep ball throwers in the league, and he could use a big Alshon Jeffrey-like target in this offense, so DK Metcalf is entirely possible too, but like I said in my last video, you gotta remember who's drafting here. I don't see Tom Coughlin using the 7th overall pick on a wide receiver. Before the free agency process, the Lions were an easy mock for an edge defender every single time, and after signing Trey Flowers, they're still a pretty easy pick for me. Devin White was actually penciled in here before the news of Trey Flowers broke because of the linebacker play in Detroit. It's been pretty bad, and Jared Davis has yet to live up to his potential. The Lions could actually double down on edge defenders if they wanted, and I wouldn't blame them, because you can never really trust free agents from New England, even though Matt Patricia and Trey Flowers have that New England connection. But I do know that the teams that pass on Devin White will eventually regret it, especially if they strongly considered him throughout this process. I don't care if the Browns signed Calvin Johnson out of retirement, along with John Brown and Cole Beasley. I'm right there with you, Bills fans. I think that they should draft DK Metcalf here. I've been shouting for him now for multiple teams, and I had him here before the free agency signings, but this is somewhat of a conservative franchise, and I just don't know if I see them using a top 10 pick on a wide receiver, especially in a draft that is so deep at the position, because they've got serious needs along the trenches on both sides of the ball. I also don't see this offense being built around a prolific passing game, even if they had the weapons. So I'm giving them the most Buffalo-ish type player in the draft in Jonah Williams. He's going to help them build a strong offensive foundation that is built around the running game, which is what they want to do anyways. Joe Flacco doesn't mean the Broncos won't be taking a quarterback in this draft, if not at pick 10. In my previous mock, I literally talked myself into the idea in the middle of prepping for their pick because of the fact that the Broncos could just cut their losses with Flacco, dump his entire salary, and it only cost them a 4th round pick. Meanwhile, they could draft the quarterback that John Elway has loved throughout this entire process in Drew Lock. He's got almost the exact skill set of Flacco, so they could let him sit back for a year or until Flacco is no longer the better option, and it would actually be a better mentor process than Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. The Bengals made one of the worst free agency signings of the year so far with right tackle Bobby Hart. I don't know why anybody would want a player that has been a part of the Giants offensive line or the Bengals' worst offensive line in recent history, but I got you, Bengals fans. Cody Ford could play inside at guard and then possibly bump out to right tackle once the Bengals realize that Bobby Hart ain't the one. This one should be interesting, guys. The Packers are a traditional franchise. They typically love to just build through the draft and pay their own guys, and that's about it, right? But this year, they went a little bit outside of their comfort zone and signed a bunch of free agents on the defensive side. They've been one of the early winners of free agency so far, and there's a lot of mock drafts out there that have them taking TJ Hawkinson here, which I agree would be an ideal Packers tight end and a fan favorite, I'm sure. They love their white guys up there in Green Bay. But if the wide receiver with the highest ceiling falls into their lap, I think they have to take him. Aaron Rodgers might not have another MVP season in him at this point in his career, but he deserves a weapon capable of getting him back to form. Packers fans are going to hate this pick because they have been conditioned to expect safe and boring picks over the years. And like I said, they love their white guys up there. But the moves they made in free agency allow them to make a gamble here and try to go all in with Aaron for a few more seasons. This move would put some pressure on Aaron Rodgers to get the most out of a physical specimen like DK Metcalf. One of my favorite prospects in the draft has fallen to a team that has holes everywhere. Good teams already draft the best player available, but the Dolphins are going to need to use that strategy even more than any of the previous 12 teams to pick in front of them due to the lack of young building blocks on the team right now. Ed Oliver has probably been the best player available for the last 7 picks or so, but with other needs and prospects available at a close or damn near equal talent value, those teams can pass on a guy that so many people seem to be afraid of. But Ed Oliver is young. I think he's only 21 years old, and the Dolphins need really young guys with a high ceiling that they can build on throughout this tank year that they're about to go through. The Falcons also happen to have the best player available at a position of need fall into their laps. The debate on Rashawn Gary is all over the place. Some people think he's a top 5 pick, and some people think he's a second round player. I think the truth is that he's somewhere in between those two. He's got the physical tools of a number 1 overall pick, like a Jadeveon Clowney, but bigger and stronger. But his production at Michigan was never reflective of that talent. And for everybody that is like a real serious nerd, people who follow high school players, and he was the number 1 overall player in his high school class, and I feel like he's never really lived up to that potential, but has still carried that clout throughout his college career and now into the NFL draft. The Falcons are a team where he could find a home at whichever position best suited him at the NFL level. He could stay on the edge and be that guy to play opposite the Leo, or make the transition to defensive tackle, play the 3 technique, which so many people think that that's what he's best at, and that would allow the Falcons to move on from Grady Jarrett in 2020 and let him walk after franchise tagging him this year. The Redskins are in a weird place. I get it that they think that they're in kind of a win now position, but whether it's Case Keenum, Alex Smith, or eventually a rookie in the draft, they need to improve the production from their pass catchers. Health has been the main reason that their current batch of prospects can't be relied on, but N'Keal Harry would be a potential number 1 wide receiver moving forward. But like I said, they're in a weird place. The report that Jay Gruden found out about them signing Landon Collins through the media is pretty weird. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jay Gruden as a member of the Raiders staff in 2020. The Panthers need an edge rusher more than anything, in my opinion. This is one of the picks from the previous mocks that did not age well, and I flip-flopped with Montez Sweat and Ja'Kai Polite a few times, and at the last moment I put Ja'Kai Polite ahead of Montez Sweat because I expected Ja'Kai Polite to be the athlete that you see in the games and on film, and I expected Montez Sweat to be a little bit stiff like he is on film, but literally the exact opposite happened at the combine. Montez Sweat looked like one of the best overall athletes in this entire draft class, and as a fan of his, I was looking forward to justifying him as a top 15 pick, maybe even a top 10 pick. He might have slid in at number 5 for Brian Burns instead. But then this heart condition came out, and I had deja vu of Mo Hurst going from a top 10 prospect to a 5th round pick. Now, after the dust has settled a little bit, I've come to the conclusion that Montez Sweat won't fall that far because his issue isn't nearly as severe, and he fits so many teams so well, especially the Panthers as they shift to a hybrid defense. So this is kind of his floor in my opinion. I could see him going a lot higher than this, but just in case the heart condition does push him down boards a little bit, this is the lowest I see him falling. With the Giants taking over the Browns pick and taking over as the new Browns of the NFL, who knows where Dave Gettleman is going with this 17th overall pick. Too bad there's not a guy that could be like a top 5 wide receiver in the league by his 2nd season available here with this 17th overall pick, because the Giants all of a sudden have a real need at wide receiver. I could see them either using this pick to trade up to secure Dwayne Haskins, even though they're quote unquote not interested in him, or if they go pass rusher early and right tackle here, and then maybe a quarterback early in the 2nd, and try and say that they're actually behind Eli as their starter for 2019. I'm giving them best player available because that's what a good GM does, but Gettleman has so far proven the opposite, so who knows, but I do know that they do not deserve a player of Clelin Ferrell's stature to fall into their lap, but that's the nature of the game. The Vikings surprisingly got Anthony Barr to renege on the Jets and kept one of their better defenders. This means that they really need to hit on an offensive lineman early in the draft because they don't have money for free agents anymore. Garrett Bradbury might be the best center in the draft and could eventually play that position for the Vikings, but he gives them a little bit of guard flex until then. I've been giving the Titans a tight end for a while now, and the Ryan Tannehill trade does not make me waver on this pick at all. This team is unhappy with their starting quarterback, and they're making moves to ensure that they get better production for the position moving forward. Baby Gronk is the best option for the Titans at number 19 and should go a long way with giving whoever ends up playing the position a nice little safety blanket, while Corey Davis continues to develop, hopefully. Even with the Giants and the Redskins being complete train wrecks, the Steelers might take the cake for the train wreck champions of 2019. And I feel like the best way for them to handle this is really just to put their head down and pretend like it's not a real thing, grab the best player in the draft, and just move on. Byron Murphy falling to number 20 just shows you how deep that I think this draft class is elsewhere, because a cornerback of this stature should really be going top 10, top 15 at the latest. The Seahawks have been relatively quiet, and that's partly because they aren't rich in the necessary areas to improve your team, such as limited cap space and draft capital to make the moves that they need. It's unlikely that they even stay put in this 21st pick because they are notorious for moving up and down, and I would assume a wide receiver needy team jumps in front of the Ravens who have the following pick and allows the Seahawks to trade down and acquire more picks in this deep draft. Until then, the next best offensive tackle in the class is located right around the corner from them in Washington, and Andre Dillard. My My only hesitations with him is the offense that he comes from, with Mike Leach being kind of a gimmicky. We don't really call them gimmicky anymore because the spread option has been so prevalent in the NFL, but it's one where the offensive linemen don't really have to block for that long. So we'll see how he translates to the NFL. The Ravens have been ignoring the wide receiver position after making some shrewd signings last offseason that I really like. For some reason, none of those guys will be back in 2019, so the Ravens have kind of pigeonholed themselves into drafting a guy that they think will be the best fit for Lamar Jackson. While his accuracy develops, we'll say, he's going to need a big target with a huge catch radius like Hakeem Butler. When I initially saw this guy, I assumed he was just going to be another big lanky receiver that can't really move well enough to be an NFL wide receiver, but this guy, he is different. The Texans have taken the best player available along the offensive line in every mock draft I've done this year because their unit is probably the worst in the league, and Deshaun Watson's career is being wasted while playing behind it. So I had been very critical of the Raiders and their rebuild ever since John Gruden came around. But this offseason so far, their free agency moves, it's all been pretty awesome. I can't say I'm a huge fan of paying Trent Brown that much money because I don't trust guys that the Patriots allow to walk out of their door, but he's a Super Bowl champion at a premium position, so I get it. But the rest of the moves they made have allowed them to take the best player available with all three of these first round picks. I know that Raiders fans really want to see a Khalil Mack replacement in this first round, but they can't reach on a guy if they don't end up getting him at 4. Adding a leader to the defense like Devin Bush could go a long way in building a defense that is solid up the middle, and sacks and pressures will come by putting offenses in tough positions on 3rd and long. The Eagles signing Malik Jackson opened the door for them to invest a year of rehab in a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. He is a top 10 prospect in the draft at a position of need that they could select late in the first round, still get that 5th-year option on his contract, and allow Malik Jackson to play out a year uninterrupted as the defensive tackle to play alongside Fletcher Cox and take some of the pressure off of him. Christian Wilkins was probably the pick here if they hadn't addressed the position via free agency, but Jackson is a win-now move, while Simmons can take over for him if his play declines or he just doesn't return to form. The Colts could also be in the market for Jeffrey Simmons, but I don't know if they're in a position to be as patient and would probably prefer the instant impact from a guy like Christian Wilkins. They too have also had an awesome offseason. I loved the move of signing Devin Funchess. I think that Andrew Luck really needed a wide receiver like that, and then to get Justin Houston on a relatively cheap deal for a guy of his name and stature. I think the Colts are going to be a force to be reckoned with in 2019. Jared Cook was a bright spot in the Raiders offense last year, and Noah Fant could offer a similar skill set for them. I know I said the Raiders' plan is probably going to be to buy an offense and draft a defense, but I still don't like any of the edge rushers at this point in the draft for where they're slotted, and Noah Fant is just too much of a talent for them to pass up on. Getting some youthful talent along the offensive line is another option, but once again, that's just too boring for Gruden here. The Chargers are another team that used free agency to fill holes with options that prevent them from needing to reach on a defensive tackle or a linebacker. Interior offensive line is definitely an option here, because that's probably their next biggest need that they haven't really addressed with a legitimate option. But I love the idea of pairing last year's first round pick Derwin James with one of the under the radar small school guys in Nazir Adderley. This could be the best secondary duo since Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor for the next 5 years. Adderley is a true center fielder, single high free safety that could allow Derwin James to roam all over the field as a strong safety. The Chiefs are being a little bit weird with their pass rush right now. I figured that either Justin Houston or Dee Ford wouldn't be back in 2019 because they couldn't afford them, but not both of them. And then cutting Eric Berry surprised me too, but that made more sense financially. The edge rushers drop off quickly in this class in my opinion, so grabbing the best press man cornerback would be a steal here. After the aggressive move earlier in this draft to get a weapon for Aaron Rodgers, the Packers need to find a new leader for the defense now that Clay Matthews has moved on to the Rams. They got their pass rush help via free agency, and like I said, I don't like the edge rushers late in the first round, but they need a new signal caller, and Mack Wilson has experience running a hybrid defense just like this one. The Rams had Ndamukong Suh playing the nose in their 3-4, and he did an admirable job as an undersized player for the position, but it's clear that the Rams wanted to invest their cap space in that veteran pass rush, so they could add a legit nose tackle to play alongside Aaron Donald and Dexter Lawrence. The The Patriots are notoriously one of the hardest teams to mock for and always take the best player available according to their board. So wide receiver and edge rush are two of their biggest needs, right? I think that Kelvin Harmon is the next best wide receiver on the board, right? But like I said, it's always according to the Patriots board. And A.J. Brown is the slot wide receiver that Tom Brady dreams about. This guy is massive and is a next generation type of slot receiver for the NFL. I think that A.J. Brown would be a great pickup for the Patriots at the end of the first round if they didn't trade out of this pick. Alright, that'll do it for the first round. Now we've got the second round, and I'm going to try and fly through these picks just so this video isn't an hour long. The Cardinals grab one of the most versatile offensive linemen in the draft and one of the guys that I think is going to be an absolute steal at the NFL level. The Cardinals as well as the Colts are going to be offered a boatload of picks for a trade down in this scenario, but DeAndre Baker might be too good for the Colts to pass up at this point. Ja'Kai Polite could do a little damage control to his draft stock at a pro day or something, but if the Raiders don't get a chance to address their pass rush in the first, he'd be a solid value with this pick right here. Marquise Brown could eventually take the torch from Marquise Goodwin as the speed threat for the 49ers offense. Giants are a right tackle away from a complete offensive line overhaul to focus their offense around Saquon Barkley in the running game. Kelvin Harmon is being severely underrated in this draft, but he is the big downfield target that the Jaguars receiving core is definitely missing. Nick Foles is best when he's launching the ball downfield, and Harmon and him could be a really good duo. How the team feels about DJ Chark, last year's draft pick, could go a long way in determining this pick here too. The Bucs offensive line is in dire need of help, and like I said, I wanted to go offensive line with the 5th pick, but this will be an ideal spot for them to get a piece of the offensive line depth in this draft at a much better value. The Bills pass on wide receiver once again to grab one of the top tight ends in this draft class. The Broncos offensive line wasn't really a strong unit before losing their center, but they too could fill this need early on in the second round. The Bengals are a sneaky spot for a round 1 quarterback, but if they pass, I could see them settling for another Andy Dalton type in the second round. The Lions spent big money on Trey Flowers, but shouldn't settle there with addressing the pass rush. Chase Winovich is a local product that could be the motor that this defense needs, and you can't recreate the Patriots without a couple of overachieving white guys. The Packers went best player available with their picks early on, and now they can focus on filling their needs with versatile options. The Falcons have to add depth everywhere on defense, and Amani Oruwariye is a long corner that fits their defense. The Redskins are a hot mess, I know, but they need to get another option at quarterback for when they eventually tire of Case Keenum's underachieving this. With a need at cornerback and safety, the Panthers grab a guy that can do both. At this point, the Dolphins are just drafting raw talent that can develop during their tank job for Tua or Fromm or whoever takes over in 2020. The Browns actually upgraded safety from Peppers to Taylor Rapp. As much as the Vikings should use as many picks on the offensive line as possible, there's too much defensive talent available to pass on. The Titans need to add more speed and big play potential to their offense, and Paris Campbell has a lot of potential at the next level. The Steelers draft wide receivers almost every year, so it's not a need in my opinion, even after trading Antonio Brown, but Riley Ridley seems like their kind of guy, despite the average combine performance. I didn't have running back going in the top 50, even before Josh Jacobs ran a 4.640 at his pro day, so that's not the reason that he's available for the Eagles at 53. The position just doesn't feel as important as it used to, and definitely not important enough in this draft class to waste a pick any earlier than this. The Texans are another team that should use every pick on the offensive line, but that's not realistic, and they have needs elsewhere. But Jonathan Abrams just too good of a player to pass up on. DeAndre Hopkins can't be the only healthy option in the passing game, and JJ Arcega-Whiteside gives them another option cut from a similar cloth as Hopkins. Justin Lane is a quick riser in this draft class, and his size is a very coveted trait. The Eagles need more cornerbacks even after bringing back Ronald Darby. After avoiding the ransom Earl Thomas demanded, the Cowboys still need to get a center field safety. Juan Hornhill is just one of my guys. The Colts signing Devin Funchess was one of my favorite moves of the offseason. He's going to be such a perfect fit opposite of T.Y. Hilton, but more dynamic weapons are still needed in that offense. Adding Draymond Jones to the Chargers defensive line would give them a vicious pass rushing threat to combat the Chiefs passing game from the trenches. The Chiefs cutting Eric Berry surprised me, but Deontay Thompson would be a solid option to replace him. The Saints offense signed Jared Cook at tight end, so that scratched my idea of one of the receiving tight ends available still. I could see them drafting Terry McLaurin to be that next generation of Ted Ginn. The Chiefs grabbed playmakers for the secondary, and now they can start taking flyers on edge rushers. Zach Allen is one of my favorite players in this draft, yet he's falling down draft boards, and I don't know why. I trust Belichick will see his value and wouldn't let him pass this spot. Alright, that's going to do it for the second round. Guys, I'll be honest, I think that breaking down each pick by pick for the third round onwards is kind of pointless. These picks are all sort of secondary needs that I think the teams can fill with good solid talent that's still going to be available. I'm really excited for this third round of the draft and beyond. I think that this draft is so rich in cornerbacks and wide receivers and running backs that there's going to be so many stars that are made from the later rounds of this draft, and I'm pretty excited to see how this all plays out. Guys, and this is where I'm going to do a mid-mock intermission. If you've made it this far, you probably care about what I have to say rather than just skimming through the picks. Stay tuned to the end, and I will go into more detail about what happened with this DK Metcalf video and explain the stale taste that's been in my mouth during this 2-week break and just the frustrations that come with being a content creator on YouTube. So the main announcement that I have for this channel is that my wife and I, we had the twins. They had to be induced on Monday, March 11th, and that coincided with the first day of quote-unquote legal tampering in the NFL. So needless to say, I was a hot mess watching Twitter for all the potential signings while adjusting my mock draft and trying to make sure that my wife was not in pain or discomfort or just overall not bored just sitting there waiting for these twins to come out. And then with these twins needing to be fed every 3 hours, it took a while for me to finish this mock. So I really want to say thank you guys so much for staying patient. I'd love to start using my Discord channel to communicate with you guys more, so I'm not relying on making announcements like this in my videos. So if there's somebody out there that's familiar with Discord, reach out to me there and tell me what I need to do to start taking advantage of this channel. Also, if you don't know anything about Discord, but you have it or you use it, or you just want to hang out and talk about football with me and a couple of my buddies, go ahead and there's a link in the description. You can join the Discord channel. I think I have the notifications muted right now, so I don't always see what's being said in there, but I'm probably going to change that if, we get a lot of people joining after this. And lastly, if I'm going to be able to convince my wife to give me more time to record and edit videos, I need to show her why it's worth my time financially. I enjoy doing it. This has actually been so much fun. I feel like I've got so much energy and hype just going through and recording these picks right now through this process, but I'm probably going to need to create a Patreon account. I really don't like that. I don't like asking for money. I think the Patreon is the only way that you can really do it without just straight up asking, but I don't know what could I give you guys that would be, worth a donation. It's embarrassing for me to ask that, but this is now becoming like a real big part of my life. I went through a huge issue with my latest DK Metcalf scouting report getting demonetized like 6 times, and it's really just these like media companies bullying us. Everything that I did falls under fair use, so that DK Metcalf video should be eligible for me to monetize and get a little bit of money back for the effort and time that I put into making and recording and planning and shooting and editing and all the stuff that goes into making these videos. But there's these bully companies that put a copyright claim out on your video, and then you can dispute the claim, but then it's not even YouTube that gets involved. YouTube basically is just like a middleman that just stands there with their arms folded and says nothing for you, and all they do is say, we can't help you, you have to convince this other media company to not have a copyright claim against you, and if you fight it and this other media company still doesn't give a shit, they can just put a strike on you. So I had this one XO Media Sports or something like that put 3 different copyright claims on my one video. If I was to go through with all of those, I would have gotten 3 strikes and been out immediately from one video. So I tested it out. I went ahead with one, got them to back down off of that one copyright strike. So I went ahead and I was like, okay, cool. So they realized they were wrong in this. So I went ahead and appealed the last 2, and they got back to me with a 4th copyright claim. And YouTube basically messaged me and said, the only way that you can prevent yourself from getting strikes and then getting this video taken down anyways is to appeal your claim. So the video didn't pop off like some of my mock drafts. So I went ahead and just said, you know what, I'm going to just cut my losses on this one. Felt like I learned a lot, but those are the reasons why I don't use a lot of player highlights and stuff like that, because as content creators, we're basically just sitting here at the will of YouTube to try and get our back. We don't have the money to afford the attorneys and lawyers and stuff that these companies do, and even though we are technically in the right, that we are using their clips and stuff and editing them and breaking them down and changing them and making them our own, which constitutes under fair use, therefore we should be allowed to use them. It doesn't matter, because all that they have to do is just have some intern go through and flag all these videos that they see come up with potential clips from their services. So it's all kind of bullshit. So long story short, if I'm going to be able to do this long term, I'm going to need to be able to help my family financially for the time and energy that I'm putting into these videos and into this channel. Don't feel obligated. It's super awkward for me to even ask. I never like to do this kind of stuff, but we just reached that point now with 2 new mouths to feed in this house that it's just kind of appropriate for me to start trying a little harder to avoid this turning into a financial burden and make it so that it at least is paying for itself, basically. And if somebody knows of someone that I can get some sort of help from to deal with this situation, I'd really appreciate it. Like I said, join the Discord. If you really want to contact me, you can either DM me on Twitter or join my Discord, and you'll find out who I am on there, and you can follow me on there and message me on Discord. I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. It's been quite a life changer. This has been the most fun draft process that I've experienced so far in my life, and that's saying something because I've been such a huge fan of this since I can remember. This is what made me really fall in love with the NFL, and from doing this process on Madden as my own kind of GM for years and years and years. So I appreciate you guys for watching this and for making this such an enjoyable experience. Let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed the picks that I gave your team. If you didn't, honestly, just type something down there, because like I said, YouTube is not getting our back, but at least they let us know the things that we can do or that help us and help our channel, and just leaving a comment is always a good one. Hitting that like button. We are trying to hit, let's do 2,000 likes in this video. We're trying to hit 2,000 likes in this video, and then I'll come out with my crazy mock draft after that. Guys, pray for me and these twins and my wife and our sanity. Pray that we are able to get through this process with 2 kids driving us nuts, waking us up every 2 to 3 hours at nighttime. I can't remember the last night I had a full night's sleep without having to wake up early. I'm actually recording this video, skipping out on my early shift of sleep so that I can record this video, and then at midnight go up and do the midnight feeding, and then my wife will wake up in probably 3 or 4 hours, and then she'll do a feeding. So like I said, this has been a exhausting experience. I hope you guys will stay tuned and follow me. I'm actually thinking about making another channel also that is going to be based around my family and the shenanigans that we get into. We're kind of homebodies, so we don't go out much, which leads to kind of some ridiculous cabin fever-ness, if you guys know what that means, or if you guys know what I mean by that. So stay tuned for that if I come out with that in the next couple of weeks or months. Next thing I've got planned here, guys, is my 49ers 7-round mock draft. That should be coming out here very quickly after this video, because I'm recording probably both in the same night, because that's just what I got to do these days, because I don't get much time. So make sure you guys stay tuned, check that out, and I will see you in the next video.